Hey everyone, and welcome to my annual tradition where I rank all the books I read in the past year. 2022 was a mixed year in terms of the books I read, but overall I would say it was better than last year. This year I read a total of 10 books, so it's a pretty even list. So what's the worst book I read this year? Well, number 10 is Remarkably Ruby. So not only was this the worst book I read this year, it was also the worst book in the Emmy and Friends series so far. This is about the most cliche middle school story that you can ask for. Especially Ruby, the main character, who is the most cliche character. I mean, it's a character you've seen a million times before if you've read other middle school graphic novels. Stop me if you've heard this one before. There's two characters who used to be friends who are no longer friends and now things are awkward between them. Then you have the other perspective of the book, Mia, and she's just a popular-ish kind of girl who has her new group of friends because, again, she used to be friends with Ruby, and her character is just really unlikable, I felt. I didn't really care about what she was trying to do. She's trying to run for class president. The book does try to make you sympathize with her character, but I just didn't. I really didn't like her character, and I hated the way she treated Ruby. You sympathize more with Ruby because when it's revealed why Mia stopped being friends with Ruby, you start to hate her even more. I mean, her logic doesn't even make sense. She stops hanging out with Ruby because the crowd that they were hanging out with was more mature, and Ruby is apparently just cringe, as she puts it, which is a word that I hate. I can't stand the word cringe just because it's overused nowadays. But yeah, Mia describes Ruby as cringe, and it's really just makes her character extremely unlikable because it's like, what, like Ruby's really done nothing wrong. It's all Mia's problem. But yeah, this book was so bad that I actually decided to reread it. I ended up reading it when it first came out, and I ended up not liking it. And then a few months later, I looked back and I was like, was it really as bad as I remembered? So I ended up reading it again, and I ended up hating it again. So yeah, it's easily the worst of the Emmy and Friends books. I wouldn't recommend this at all. At number 9 is the newest Babysitters Club book, Marianne's Bad Luck Mystery. More like Marianne's Bad Book Mystery. I mean, I don't even understand why this book was made. This book can be described as just stupid and pointless. When you hear the title Marianne's Bad Luck Mystery, it sounds, well, mysterious, and it sounds intriguing. Like, when I first saw the cover and the title, I was like, this actually sounds really interesting. I'm actually excited to read this book. But it turns out the book is just about Marianne getting a chain letter in the mail, and of course she doesn't forward it to anyone, so a bunch of bad luck and misfortunes end up happening to all the members of the Babysitters Club because it apparently affects everyone, not just Marianne. And I really thought the book was really stupid and pointless, like I said. I mean, could you imagine Anne Martin trying to pitch the concept of this book? I have a feeling it went something like this. So Anne, I hear you have another Babysitters Club book you want to pitch to us. Yeah, you're not going to believe this. This is probably one of the best ideas I've ever had for a BSC book. So Marianne goes to the mail, and she finds a chain letter, and after that a bunch of bad luck happens to all the members of the Babysitters Club. So do you have, like, any sort of side plot? No, that's pretty much it. Whatever, it's Babysitters Club, people will buy it. Yeah, that sounds right. And another unfortunate thing about this book is that, unfortunately, the illustrator, Cynthia Yan Sheng, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, is unfortunately the worst illustrator that we've had so far in the adaptations of the Babysitters Club books. It's not bad, it's just the art style is just so basic and boring. I mean, there's no, like, the expressions are just very basic. There's no, like, style to it. There's no, like, exaggerated style like the previous books have had. So that was really disappointing. The only compliment I can really give this book is that I did find one joke to be really funny. It's a joke where Marianne is showing the Babysitters Club, the other members, something she got in the mail, and they're all crowded around all scared, and Christy's like, she said, again, this isn't a quote, but Christy says something along the lines of, oh, you should open it, and Marianne's like, you're just scared, and Christy's like, yeah, you're right. So that was a funny joke, but yeah, other than that, the book is terrible. I would, honestly, I'd recommend skipping it. You really don't have to read this. At number 8 is Halloween Ends, the novelization. So if you've seen my review of this garbage movie, this is the novelization, of course, and really the only differences are that it gives us a little bit more backstory involving Corey and Corey's mom. Most of the differences are flashback scenes, not necessarily just with Corey and his mom, although that's the majority of the flashback scenes, but there's also flashback scenes involving Lori and some other characters. And yeah, it really didn't change my opinion at all. It didn't add anything, I don't think. Although I will give credit to the flashback scenes with Corey's mom. I think those added a bit. I mean, it gives you more of an idea of how crazy Corey's mom is. It also has the original ending that was planned for the movie, which I really am happy and grateful that they ended up removing. And I'm not going to spoil it here. You're going to have to read the book to find out. But let's just say that it was really stupid, and I'm glad they kept it out of the movie. At number 7 is The Babysitter's Club, Book 12, Jessi's Secret Language. This book was really average. It was very bland. Not that it wasn't necessarily that it was a bad book, but it just wasn't very good either. It's not really a very thrilling story. I mean, Jessi has to babysit a kid who is deaf, and she has to learn, how to deal with a deaf kid, and it's a fine enough book. I mean, it's kind of like a feel-good type story, but I read this once and didn't care to ever go back. I don't care to ever go back to it. At number 6 is yet another Babysitter's Club book. This is book 11, Goodbye, Stacey, Goodbye. So just by hearing that title, I think you can understand what this book is about. Stacey has to move back to New York, and as a result, she has to say goodbye to all of her friends, all the members of the Babysitter's Club. And, it's basically like Jessi's Secret Language. It's a feel-good type story. It gets pretty sad at times. There's some really good character moments, which is why I think it is the best Babysitter's Club book we got this year. But again, that's not saying much. I don't think any of the Babysitter's Club books this year. If this is, a sign of things to come, then that's really unfortunate, because I think pretty much all the books after book 9, they've just been very samey feeling. They don't really seem very involved. The plots aren't very involved. They usually just stick to just one basic plot for the whole book. And it's the same with Goodbye, Stacey, Goodbye. It was just the least bad of the BSC books this year. So now we get into the top 5, and these are the books that I actually think are really good books. At number 5 is the newest Babysitter's Little Sister book, Karen's School Picture. Yeah, let that sink in. Karen's School Picture was better than all of the BSC books this year. And not only was it better than all those books, I actually think that this is the best in the Babysitter's Little Sister series so far. Now, once again, Karen's School Picture isn't really that different from the first 4 books. It has a simple plot, it's a book for younger readers, not necessarily targeted towards, a person like me, but I actually would recommend this book to younger readers. It's got a good message, and I think that's really the reason why it's the best in the series so far, because it's the only one that actually, is trying to say something. Not that the other books were, throwaway nothing books, but it's just that this one was more involved in its message. You know, it's a message that I think we've all heard before, but for a kid's book, I think it's an important message for kids to learn. Karen gets glasses for the first time, and the kids start to make fun of her, and eventually she learns to just ignore them. And the book is trying to be about ignoring others and not really caring what they think of you, you know, just being yourself. And, you know, again, I'm sure we've all heard that message before, but again, this is a book for younger readers, so I think that message for this book is really great. Number 4 is Crunch by Kayla Miller. Now, I'll be honest with you guys, I actually completely forgot that this book was released in 2022. I actually was remembering it wrong, and I thought it was released in 2021. So upon realizing it, and I was like in the process of making this list and this video, so I was like, oh, well, I better reread that really fast, because again, I not only did I forget that it was released this year, I completely forgot what it was about. So I quickly ended up rereading it and adding it into this list. And yeah, I think you can tell that I liked it because it's at number 4. This book is simple but effective in its message. Olive is trying to take on a bunch of different activities and tasks all at once. She's trying to deal with stuff in the student council at school, and they're involved in the dress code. And she's trying to do Berry Scout meetings with her friend Willow. She's trying to make a short film. She's taking guitar lessons, and, you know, she's doing all of this stuff. And you can see the toll it's taking on her. You know, eventually she gets, you know, so she's like, she's overworking herself. This book is trying to say that you can still go after your goal and whatever you're trying to accomplish, but at the same time learn that you can still relax and, you know, not necessarily devote all your time to that goal. You know, learn to relax, learn to take breaks. And also that you should prioritize what you actually want to do instead of what you feel you have to do. It's a story that's worth telling, and not just for kids, but for people of all ages. At number 3 is the newest Diary of a Wimpy Kid book, Diaper Overload. This is basically Jeff Kinney's response to all the fans who have always wanted a book about Roderick. And yeah, this book is entirely about Roderick and his band trying to make it in the industry, trying to become more well-known and more recognized. And the great thing about this book is that they never succeed in anything they do. You know, they're trying to do all these things to branch out, to be more noticed, to have their band be recognized, and it just always fails. And while reading this book, I was thinking to myself, like, I love that they keep on failing and over and over and over again, but I was worried that by the end of the book they would succeed and like make it big, because that type of stuff has happened in Wimpy Kid books in the past, like characters, you know, doing like kind of unrealistic things. Not that I'm saying it's unrealistic that you can be famous. It's just that I was worried that they were gonna, like, it was gonna be a kiddie story where it's like, oh, we'll keep trying until you succeed. But no, they never succeed in this book. Even to the very end, they still fail, and I loved that. Now, one thing about this book that I will say is that Greg has no real purpose in this book. I mean, the only reason why he's there is because I think Jeff Kinney knows that Roderick isn't necessarily the type of person to write in a diary. So the only reason that Greg is in this book is so that he can record the events of what's happening to Roderick and his band. You know, Roderick will be telling Greg what happened to them, and then Greg will just write it down in his diary. And Greg is sometimes involved in what they do, but most of the time he's not. So as you can see, the cover is a little bit misleading. It would make you think that Greg is the one that's trying to make it in the industry, but it's actually Roderick. Roderick is pretty much the main character in this book without actually being the character that the story is being told by, if that makes sense. Like, he's the main character, but he's not the main character at the same time. And maybe some people might think that that is a problem with the book, but I actually don't. I completely understand it, because again, Roderick is not the type of person to write in a diary, so it makes sense why Greg is the one to do that. It's just that he doesn't really have that much involvement throughout the book. As far as the comedy is, the jokes can be hit or miss. It's very mixed. Like, a lot of the jokes are funny, but a lot of the jokes are not funny. I'd say this is the best Wimpy Kid book since The Meltdown, and that was 4 years ago, so I guess that's great. At number 2 is Svetlana Chmakova's new book, Enemies. Now, I'll be honest with you guys, the first time I read this book, when it first came out back in September, I think, I actually had this at like number 5 on the list, I think, but in leading up to this video, I decided to read it again, and I'm glad I did, because I liked it a lot more, as you can see. Enemies is about Felicity and the dynamic she has with her sister, where her sister is accomplishing a lot of things and she's getting a lot of things done, and Felicity is not really doing that. She is working on things, but she doesn't necessarily always get most of those things done. And the book is trying to be about going at your own pace when trying to accomplish things. You know, you don't necessarily have to feel like you need to accomplish a whole bunch of things. It's important to go at your own pace when trying to accomplish something. Felicity is all stressed out because she wants to prove to her sister that she can actually get things done in a timely manner. But by the end of the book, she realizes that she doesn't necessarily have to do that. She can still do whatever she's trying to do, but not be forced to like a time constraint. Now, if there's one problem I did have with the book, it would be the character of Joseph, who is Felicity's former friend. They used to be friends in elementary school. I think you know where I'm going with this. It's the book's side plot. It's, you know, the side plot of Felicity and Joseph trying to come to terms with one another. I also don't like the moment when Joseph reveals to Felicity the problem he had with her. He's upset with Felicity because Felicity keeps on going around and telling things to people about Joseph that weren't necessarily secrets, but are things that Joseph doesn't necessarily want people to know. And that's why he's angry with Felicity. And while I understand why he'd be angry, you know, that's justified to be angry about, but I just think he overreacted a little bit. I think he could have handled the situation better. Like, he could have just, you know, went up to Felicity and said, "Hey, I don't like that you're doing this. Please stop." But no, he gives her the silent treatment throughout the majority of the book until like about halfway, a little over halfway through, until he reveals, you know, why he's angry. And I just felt like it was kind of stupid. Like, that could have been resolved way earlier. So we have like this side plot in the book that isn't really necessary. But overall, I liked Enemies. I liked the message it was trying to give and all that stuff. It's just that there was some minor problems involving Joseph's character. Now, number 1, my favorite book of 2022 is Besties Find Their Groove. Now, if you remember, Besties Work It Out was number 3, I think, last year on my 2021 list. And in that video, I stated that it's a bit of a kiddie adventure. You know, two friends trying to learn the meaning of responsibility. And I liked it. It was a really good book. But Besties Find Their Groove is not only way better than the first book, it's, you know, it's my favorite book of 2022 easily. Like, it's not even a contest. And I'm going to explain in a bit. Now, I actually have a lot to say about this book, so be warned. So first off, this book is more mature than the first book, and in my opinion, that's part of the reason why it makes it a lot better, because it can deal with more mature themes. This book actually has a lot to say in regards to growing up and adulthood. It's trying to say that, you know, when you're a kid, a lot of kids are in a hurry to, like, they think that they have to do so many things because they're growing up, you know, just for the sake of their growing up. You know, it's trying to be about basically taking a step back and realizing that you don't necessarily have to go at life and growing up as a checklist of things that you feel that you need to do. Especially one of the friends, Shanda, in the book, is very obsessed with this dance that is coming up that they're doing for this, and the school's doing. And she's panicking. She's telling Beth, we need to do this, we need to get dates, we need to do this. And she thinks that it needs to be all like boom, 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 like we need to, like a checklist, like I said. And Beth is kind of saying, calm down. I don't think it really needs to be like that. And it's really funny. That's another thing. The book is really funny in how it portrays this, but it also is very mature in portraying it. Shanda has a bunch of really funny moments, and that is mainly due to the illustrations, which are wonderfully done by Christina Liu, who I think deserves more credit than usual. It's not just like passable illustrations. The illustrations make the book funnier, and I don't mean that as is like I'm laughing at how bad the illustrations are. No, it's the exact opposite. Like, the illustrations are what make the book better. You're laughing with the illustrations, not laughing at the illustrations, if that wasn't clear. So Christina Liu definitely deserves a lot of credit, and Kayla Miller and Jeffrey Canino, the co-authors of this book, also deserve a lot of credit, because again, like the message in this book and the themes are really good. The book also has themes about accepting yourself, like accepting who you are as a person. And yeah, that's surprisingly very mature for a book that's primarily targeted towards kids. I mean, like I said, Besties Work It Out was more of a kiddie book, and Find Their Groove like steps it up a notch and actually it deals with mature elements. What I think is that the dance that Shanda and Beth are really excited about, I think the school dance kind of represents adulthood. I think that's what the kind of the deeper message, or like the representation. I think like the dance represents adulthood is what I'm trying to say. And to be honest, it may sound silly to some of you, because you might think, oh, Aaron, you're just overreacting. It's just a simple kids book. But I'm telling you, this book spoke to me. This book really does have something meaningful to say. If I could get personal for just a minute, in terms of my personal life, my life hasn't really been the best lately. I'm just gonna say that it hasn't been great for me lately, and reading this book actually made me more happy. And I'll be completely honest with you guys, during this past year, I had some thoughts about quitting reading graphic novels, specifically the ones that I reviewed on my channel and the ones I make these list videos about, which means you also wouldn't have gotten, if I quit reading graphic novels, specifically, again, middle grade graphic novels, you guys wouldn't have gotten this video, and you wouldn't have gotten this annual tradition anymore. But you know what? It's thanks to Besties Find Their Groove that I will continue to make these videos and will continue to read middle grade graphic novels. That's how much this book meant to me. It really spoke to me, and it really resonated with me. This doesn't happen often, but this book made me think about its message and just the book in general, even days after I finished reading it. And that's very rare. That usually never happens. I'll read a book and I'll be like, oh, well, that was good, or oh, well, that was bad. But Besties Find Their Groove wasn't like that. I thought about this book days after I read it. Besties Find Their Groove reminded me why I love reading middle grade graphic novels, even as someone who's almost in their 20s. You know, some people are probably going to look at me and say, you know, how old are you? You know, why are you still reading these books that are meant for like younger teens and even sometimes children? And you know what? Besties Find Their Groove is the answer to that. This book reminded me why I love reading middle grade graphic novels, and it's convinced me to continue to read middle grade graphic novels. Because it's books like this that make all of the bad graphic novels that I read, like Remarkably Ruby and The Babysitter's and Marianne's Bad Luck Mystery, you know, it's books like these that make that all worth it. And usually I don't do this when reviewing anything, but I wanted to give a thank you to the makers of Besties Find Their Grooves. Thank you, Kayla Miller, thank you, Jeffrey Canino, and thank you, Christina Liu, because your work on this book, you know, convinced me to continue reading. So those are all the books I read in 2022 ranked. Let me know what books you read this year, you know, whether it's middle grade graphic novels or not, I really don't care. I just, you know, I'd love to hear the books that you read this year and the book that made you feel a similar feeling that I felt with Besties Find Their Groove. And by the way, I do have physical copies of all the books that I mentioned. It's just that I feel like it's better if I just put a picture of the book up. That way you can have a better look at the cover. And also I'm going to be doing a few ranking videos in the coming weeks, just because, you know, it's the beginning of the year and I have rankings based on things that released in 2022. So you look forward to that. And that's about it for this video. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.